Hey there. Happy Wednesday. First live cast of February so far. I'm Jamey, Stonemaier Games. Happy to be here for the next hour to spend that time with you. And we have a lot to cover today, particularly because it is newsletter day. In fact, I need to pull that up on my other screen here. Newsletter day here at Stonemaier Games. So if you didn't get the newsletter, you can subscribe, but you can also see it, or you should be able to see it in the description of this video if you want to check out the recent news. Kind of a low, slow news month because last month was all about FinSpan. It still is all about FinSpan, but right now we're in the FinSpan delivery process rather than this FinSpan information sharing process about new stuff about FinSpan. I'll pull that up on my other screen just so we have it handy in case we need to look over there at the newsletter. That's what it looks like. So yeah, I hope you're doing well today. Feel free, as always, to ask me anything. I guess I'll throw out there at the beginning that the shipping update for FinSpan is that Canada and Australia are all caught up. And so that does mean if you placed an order like a few minutes ago, or maybe even earlier this week, it may not have shipped yet, but really they are up to date in Australia and Canada for orders in those regions. Australia includes Asia and New Zealand. In the US, champion orders are now caught up. Again, I'm not entirely sure if that fully means all champion orders made this week, but all those that were made launch week and last week have all been sent, with the exception of those that are waiting for the $2 and $50 Scythe and Expeditions metal coins. We are still waiting on that shipment to arrive. But most championship orders have shipped. All non-champion orders are now starting to ship and have already started to ship. And then in Europe, the information we still have is that February 10th is the date that the freight shipment will arrive. So they'll start probably shipping around that day or maybe the next day. Garrett says, how will the USPS China parcel freeze affect Stonemaier Games, if at all? Garrett, that might be a little bit of news to me. I'm not familiar with that immediately. Is that using USPS to ship to or from China? If so, that shouldn't affect us at all. When we receive packages from Panda, they don't use USPS. And when we ship to customers in China from our Australian fulfillment center, they also don't use USPS. Let's see. Peter says, I ordered some coins and wooden tokens for expeditions. Any updates on UK shipping for these? So, Peter, that is the shipment that we are waiting to arrive on February 10th. We did send an update to anyone who ordered at least FinSpan in Europe so that they know that February 10th is that date. But, Peter, it is possible that you didn't get that email because maybe FinSpan wasn't in your order. If so, I'm sorry. We should have maybe included all orders over that are part of that freight shipment that's arriving on February 10th. Yeah. Sam is here. Sam, I'm highlighting Sam's comment here because Sam helped really write the blog post that I posted on Monday, where he talked about Everstone, his first Kickstarter project, his first crowdfunded self-published game. And he's also working on a new game that will go on Kickstarter soon called Forgelings. So Sam was very open and honest and transparent in a blog post interview that I posted on Monday. Other content I posted recently, what was on Sunday, I posted a video. What was this? Oh yeah, it was a great chat with Zach at Covenant about his favorite mechanisms in 5 unique card games, many of them collectible or expandable card games that I probably won't get into, but I am curious about them. And so Zach was kind enough to come on and talk about those types of games. Chad says, the base that comes with the upgraded Expeditions tokens was a fun surprise. Was it intentional to keep that a surprise with those tokens? Kind of. It's also kind of that I forgot that we had included it. That was a decision that we made a long time ago, and to include this purple base. The reason that we included it, and yeah, I would say in some way it is a little bit of a surprise. It is something that we've continued not to advertise. It's not on our web store. The reason we included that is really for no functionality at all, other than people who have Gears of Corruption, the expansion for Expeditions. Some people asked us to include a purple, specifically purple, base snap to put on the corrupted mech in the corrupted mech model of that game, or module of that game. It doesn't need a base snap. It's because every player has their own base snap. It's the one mech that doesn't have one and doesn't need one. But people asked for it, and we thought, it is not an expensive thing for us to throw into this pack as a nice little surprise. Here's the context for it. A few people mentioned USPS briefly suspended accepting parcels from China last night, but it looks like the freeze was already lifted. Seems like that is the trend in the U.S. government right now. Declare something and then immediately reverse it. I will say, I'll throw this out here. Here's a comment from Just the Movies. We love Wingspan and waiting for USPS delivery of FinSpan on Friday. I will say that we have been surprised, talking about USPS, that Miniature Market, our partner in the U.S. for shipping, we've been surprised by how much they're using USPS for the FinSpan ship out. We don't quite understand it because they rarely use USPS. They used UPS primarily for a long time, and then they switched to FedEx recently, making that their primary carrier. But we've seen over 60% of FinSpan orders be shipped by USPS. This isn't something that we really have control over. They're our fulfillment center. We say ship things in a way that can protect them and get them to customers in a reasonable amount of time at a reasonable price. That's our goal for them. And it's up to them to decide which courier is giving them the best, probably the best rates. They're probably looking at the best rates typically. They are. We've just been surprised that they've used USPS so much. And we have heard from many customers that USPS is not their preferred choice for receiving packages. These are US customers. There are probably some customers too that prefer USPS. Maybe their USPS deliveries are more consistent than UPS or FedEx. But we were surprised by it. It contradicts some information I mentioned, I think, a week or so ago, because we thought they were primarily using FedEx. So we're kind of getting to the bottom of that, but it will also be something that's flexible on an ongoing basis. Our fulfillment centers do have the right to choose the courier that they think can best serve their customers, us, and we just need to make sure that that's actually happening. Lance Anthony has something interesting here. Recently, Dice Tower posted on YouTube the challenges they had in their recent GameFound campaign, silencing rumors and fake news that they got at the start of the year. Some believed it's a way to get rich. I remember seeing Tom Vassell posted on YouTube. I didn't see the video, but I did see a long post from Tom saying that that their annual crowdfunding campaign this year on GameFound is not a way for the Dice Tower folks to get rich. I'm surprised that that was even a thing that people would think. I mean, there's a lot of folks working at the Dice Tower now trying to do a good job for the gaming community. And given that number of folks, a $300,000 campaign to serve the salaries of a bunch of folks at Dice Tower doesn't seem like that much. I know they have other sources of revenue, but Dice Tower also has other things that they're spending money on, many other expenses too, other than salaries. So, yeah, it's unfortunate that was like, I get a lot of value in fact, I backed this campaign as a person, not as Stonemaier Games, but as a person, because I get a lot of value from the Dice Tower. They review so many different games and offer content about so many different games. I don't always agree with them. But that's okay. That's the point of reviews, that we can consume different content from different reviewers to learn about their perspectives about games. And I've learned a lot as a game designer from them as well. So it was an easy to make contribution for me as a person who values their content. Aaron says he loved the conversation with Zach from Covenant. This was the video from this past weekend. Would love to get your thoughts on some of the others: Arkham LCG, Marvel LCG, Earthbound Rangers. So yeah, these are other games that they sell at Covenant. The reason, Aaron, that we didn't talk about them in the video is that I have covered all of them on the channel. So if you look up, if you search my channel for any of those games, you'll see my favorite mechanism in those games. Yeah. See a lot of comments today. Let me throw out today's question of the day to you, and then I'll answer some questions while you all catch up to this question. So, and actually, this is kind of a broad question that needs specificity, which is, what is something cool that you've seen another publisher do recently? Any other game publisher, really could be any company, but I'd prefer to narrow it down to game publishers, tabletop game publishers. What's something cool or impressive that you saw another company do? This could be in the realm of logistics, marketing, product design. Probably not as specific as game design, but we can do product design. That means, like, the packaging, how a game is presented. Anything something on someone else's website, their newsletter, anything cool or interesting that you thought served you or added value to you, accomplished by or done by another publishing company, not Stonemaier Games. Part of the reason I ask this is I'm always looking to learn from other companies and always looking to highlight them when they're doing something cool. And I recently noticed a few cool things that I saw some publishers doing that I want to highlight on a blog post. So I wanted to ask this to you in case you have anything to add to that blog post before I write it. Let's see. Justin says the Van Ryder Games just announced a new feature film with its location based on Gen Con. It has a lot of parody booths of game publishers, including Stonemaier Games. Yes. I'm forgetting it's an initial. TJ at Van Ryder reached out to me to ask if that would be okay, and I did say that would be fine. Yeah, let's see. Just looking see if there's any questions here. Pete says that he played his first game of Finspan, really loved the eggs to young to school's mechanism, and that layer of movement on the board makes it unique to other span games. I agree. I think it's something that when you say it, you're like, oh, that's not going to do much compared to the other Wingspan games, Wingspan and Wormspan. But having these tokens that evolve and move around your ocean mat, I think has a pretty. It ends up feeling quite different and adds a lot of depth to the Finspan strategy. I'm glad you're enjoying that, Pete. In fact, Pete, you reminded me here that I wanted to briefly mention my top 3 games at Geekway Mini recently. I decided not to do a full video about this, but just do a top 3 on this video. And Finspan would definitely be the number 1. I'm not going to count that because that's a Stonemaier Games game. And I didn't play it for the first time at Geekway Mini. This was a recent convention that I attended. But Finspan would be up there if it wasn't Stonemaier or wasn't my first play. My top 3, in really no particular order, because I really enjoyed all 3 of these games, were Windmill Valley, Wondrous Creatures, and Art Society. I've done videos now for Wondrous Creatures and Windmill Valley. I think the Art Society video hasn't come out yet, but all 3 I thought were fantastic games. Really, really fantastic games. Windmill Valley and Wondrous Creatures were kind of medium. They're right in my space of like a medium weight Euro game with a lot of sense of progression and discovery, very rewarding games. And Art Society is a really clever auction game, and I do enjoy a really clever auction game. So those are my Geekway top 3. I'll get back to the other title topics in a few minutes. Actually, we're on Vantage now. Here's the second one. Chad says Vantage will be your longest non-campaign game yet. Taps are inside to go up to 120 minutes. We're putting 120 to 180 on the box of Vantage. That said, there are times where you'll play Vantage where it might be a much shorter game than that, depending on player count, depending on circumstances, decisions that you make in the game. Chad says, do you feel Stonemaier Games is moving towards shorter games with the occasional longer outlier? I would say we're still generally looking for 60 to 90 minute games. I would say I value more than in the past games that skew a little bit shorter than that because they give you the potential of playing them twice in a row, back to back, like games like 45-minute games, 45 to 60-minute games, like Finspan, for example. But in the end, we want to find the right time for the game. And Vantage is a game where the exploration and discovering of it, I don't want to use the word, I'm going to say the word meandering, but I would say there's a negative connotation to meandering. But the pace of the game is really in the hands of the players. How far they go, how much they do is in the hands of the players in Vantage. So I want players to sit down to Vantage expecting it to be a longer experience if they want it to be. And as you know, Chad, I think, you say non-campaign. It is not a campaign game. I mentioned it in today's subject line because I have continued to playtest the pre-production copy of Vantage just for fun, just solo on my table, just kind of playing through it a couple times over the last few weeks because it's Chinese New Year. And even though we have fully entered production, we really fully entered production and then Chinese New Year started. So we really not going to enter production until right after the Chinese New Year. And I did catch a few things. And I think I have to come to terms with the fact that it will probably be impossible for me to catch everything in Vantage. We had an amazing oversight team. I've played it easily over 100 times at this point to catch many different things. It feels good when I catch something, but I also know every time I catch something, especially this late in the process, there's probably going to be some things that I miss in a game this big. So I'll put that out there to the world. I want you all to know that we did our best, I think, to catch everything in Vantage. And yeah. Chad says, also, all of your designs are the longer games. Is this a coincidence? That's true. All of the games that I've designed do skew on the longer end. I think that's just a coincidence. Yeah. Josh says, what are some small rituals you have that you might consider important to your design process? Maybe a small notebook or a good cup of jitter juice, some coffee. I do have about a half a cup of coffee every day. I don't know if I have rituals, Josh. That's a good question. I do see the value of rituals to kind of get into the zone of design. I don't know. And the design process is very different at different times. Like there's the pencil and paper brainstorming process that I really enjoy, but then there's also let's actually start to make the prototype on InDesign and let's print and cut that prototype. I would say I do have I have a ritual around assembling a prototype, which is that I usually put on something to watch or listen to while I do it. Because it's kind of once you are actually cutting and just, I print and cut prototypes on the printer right behind me. It is kind of a mindless process at that point. So I usually put on something interesting to consume, to watch when I do that. So yeah, that's probably the closest I have to a ritual. What about you? Do you have something like that? Okay, Joe has some clarity about Miniature Market. He says, I was able to talk to Miniature Market about USPS, and they mentioned that they're now able to get cheaper rates from USPS. This is a new service that can now offer to us. I agree with you that we'll wait to see how customers feel after their package arrives. And of course, if there are any issues, please email contact@stonemaier.com and we'll help immediately. That's great to know. Thank you, Joe, for that update. Sharing that with all of you as well. I would say it is nice that we might be able to get a little cheaper rates there, but not at the sacrifice of serving customers. So that's something that we'll have to learn about on a rolling basis. And I say it's nice to get that discount because we already heavily subsidize nearly every shipment that we send to you. Typically, most packages we send to you cost us around $18 to send, but we only charge you $10. We have flat rate shipping. So if that is an ongoing loss for us. So if we can ship a package via USPS for $15 or $16, and that's everything included, the postage, the labor, and the packaging, some of which are not related to USPS. That is nice for us, I would say, because it's tough to just take that loss on every single shipment. Sam says, have you heard of the new video game, The Bazaar? I feel like I've heard of it, but I don't know much about it. He says the creator's been making a video series where he talks through updates made in each patch, which has been really insightful for balancing with data. That's cool. No, I'll need to check that out, Sam. Thank you for that recommendation. I did play a little bit of a game called Drop Duchy, which Garrett, I don't know if Garrett, I think Garrett popped in earlier about USPS. Garrett recommended this game to me called Drop Duchy, which is a little bit like Tetris meets a roguelike tile placement town building game. And it's a free demo on Steam right now called Drop Duchy. And I had fun with it. I don't know, it added, I have a video about it that talks about my favorite thing in it. I will mention that it has an attacking element to it. Like as you advance from place to place, you then have to deal with other towns that are attacking you and you're building up a way to attack them. And I was kind of, enjoying the Dorf romantic vibes of it until the attacking was added. And then those vibes kind of went away. So I don't know if it'll exactly be a game for me, but without the attacking element, I really enjoy the other mechanisms in the game. Craig's going into Rise of Fenris. Craig, I hope you are able to refresh yourself after taking a 9-month timeout. That's a long time to take a time out of a campaign game. FG Bison says, good morning from the other side of the globe. I read U.S. news regarding the tariffs. Is this something that is finalized and would affect the price of board games? Excuse me if this has been discussed. And hasn't been discussed today for sure. I can't really tell. It's one day our president declared tariffs on Mexico and Canada, and the next day they weren't there anymore. So maybe it'll happen with China, maybe it won't. And we manufacture everything that we make in China, or most everything that we make, not our disc golf discs. Will it affect your price? No, it'll impact our profit margin, but it won't impact your price, the price that you pay. At least it's Stonemaier Games. Tinkler says, one of Stonemaier Games' tenets is that its games should be fun. We do. I know that's a broad category, but that is our main objective when we make a game. We want to bring joy to your tabletop. Do you ever worry that the experience of playing games can be too smooth? Do games need to be weird or strange as well? I love games that are weird or strange. I played a weird game called Wilmot's Warehouse the other day. That is a weird cooperative memory game. It is weird, but it's also fun. It's also a lot of fun. I think it is possible, and I know because I played some games that seem to be designed to be interesting and even weird, but not fun. Like they seem almost intentionally to say, this is a thing that is not going to be fun for players, but I'm going to put this in the game anyway. And I don't want that. And so when we playtest games, for example, there might be a mechanism that is frustrating to players. We always ask playtesters, let us know what is frustrating about this game, this experience. And that to me is something that I don't want in the game. I don't want frustrations in the game. I want tension. I want difficult decisions and interesting decisions. But I don't want, if there's something that is frustrating that we can smooth over, I think that's a good thing. I don't think smooth, I would be hard pressed to find something that where smooth is a bad thing. Yeah, but feel free to challenge me on that. Feel free to show an example. Let's see. Josh has a product design decision. I love in SkyTeam that the production marked what was trash and what was components. So that's actually very clever, Josh. I do like that. Every now and then I punch out a game and I don't know what to keep or not. I don't know what's meant to be, because when you're punching a game, you don't know the rules of the game yet. Rosie says, I love when a game is all cardboard organization, like in Harmonies. All cardboard organization. Okay, you mean like the insert is cardboard instead of plastic? I do like that too. Wondrous Creatures, which I mentioned earlier, that it has that. Oh, Rosie clarifies. Yes, cardboard compartment in Harmonies. Also, Lord of the Rings trick taking has compartments as well. Steven says Garp Hill is taking a page out of the Stonemaier book. They started a new podcast that mostly highlights other companies' games. Oh, I feel like I would love that. I love hearing Sheb talk about games. Yeah, thank you for letting me know. I will check out what's the name of the podcast. Is it just if I search Garp Hill, will I find it? Good to know, Stephen. That's awesome. Tinklar says, I haven't played any other games, but Hollandspiel's video essays have been tremendous. Oh, that's interesting. They're video essays. I love hearing this kind of thing. Hollandspiel's. I'll look up their YouTube channel. Yeah, thanks for that recommendation. Chad says, Runaway Parade Games just announced a stunningly beautiful game called Punch Bowl. The board art is dark and moody, and the components are see-through fruit tokens. It really stands out. Punch Bowl, let's take a look at it here. I know I'm supposed to be talking about our newsletter, but I'm trying to get out of full screen. I'm going to go over it. Let's pull up Punch Bowl and see what it looks like. I'll share it on the screen once I have it here. Punch Bowl. Is this it? Runaway Parade Games. Okay, here is what it looks like. I'll pull it up on the other screen here. There we go. Okay, you can't fully tell from the photo, but let's see. I do love the dark player mats. That's an interesting look with bright, colorful fruits on them. The clear, you mentioned some clear see-through fruit tokens. Oh, yeah. I can kind of see them here. Let's see if we can get a little bit closer to these fruit tokens. And you can kind of see them here. It's a little bit tough to see. But those are really cool fruit tokens. I wonder if they're gummy. Do they go with like a gummy texture, that plastic that we used in FinSpan? That's cool. Yeah, thanks for highlighting that. Let's see if let me go to newsletter really quick to see if there's anything. Go down, give you the opportunity to speak up and say if there's anything you want to talk about. We talk about FinSpan and Between Two Castles Essential here, our launch products. Just letting people know that if they miss out on the launch, you can still buy these things. These things are still largely in stock at our fulfillment centers. I think we've only gone out of stock of a few different things. And various updates. Mentioned Tokaido briefly. I've been working a lot on Tokaido stuff recently, preparing for Tokaido to be on our web store and working on Tokaido Duo with Corel. I've spent a ton of time over the last day working on the Tokaido expansions, which we plan to combine into one box. It's a lot to dig through the way things are worded in the Tokaido rulebooks. And I'm having to essentially rewrite everything, which is not what I was hoping to do with the Tokaido brand. Fortunately, I believe in the game. I love the game, but it's a lot of work. I talk about demand for out-of-stock products, some of the products that have gotten the most back-in-stock requests, which we really do use. So if there's a product on our web store that you see that is not in stock, don't just wish list it. A wish list is really for you to see that you might want to get it later. It's the back-in-stock requests that let us know if we need to make more of it. That's the main news from this month. Really, it was a light news month because of our focus on mostly just fulfilling FinSpan Between Two Castles Essential and other stuff here. But if there's anything in that newsletter that you want to talk about, I'm here. I'll talk about, before I focus on your comments for the rest of it. Actually, no, I have a lot of stuff. I'll jump around, but I do want to mention the last title mentioned here, Squid Games 2, or Squid Game. Squid Game or Games? Can't remember if it's plural or not, but I kind of binge watched it over the last couple days and loved it. I really did enjoy the first season. There was certain aspects that I would say of novelty to the first season of, oh, we've never quite seen something like this before. We're seeing similar things, but never quite like this. And I was amazed that season 2 did such an amazing job of going deeper into the characters and the whole idea that something like this could exist in the world. Like, how could it? They treat it in a very realistic way. They ask a lot of great questions, and the characters in particular, though, they go deeper into the existing characters. They add some great new characters, and most of the characters make good decisions. Maybe not always the right decision, but characters are making good / interesting decisions throughout most of the season. I thought it was and I mention all this because I think the show could have tried to just get bigger. They tried to go bigger the whole time. They didn't do that. Instead of going bigger, they tried to go deeper. And I thought that was really impressive for a second season of a show, where they could have easily just said, okay, let's add 2,000 more people. And we'll make the games even bigger. And there are some interesting games in it. Anyway, I'm rambling here. I highly recommend season 2 of Squid Games if you didn't end up watching it when it was released a month ago. Yeah, highly recommend it. So I asked the question today. Today's question of the day is something cool that another publisher is doing that you have found adds value to you. And Luke says that Plaid Hat Games has a Discord server where the designer of Wandering Galaxy is actually running some games on that server. That's cool. That's neat to hear. Franklin's Key says, wondering about which of your games you consider finished. I know Scythe and Tapestry are. You said no plans for Pendulum. I'm assuming Charterstone. Yeah, no plans for Charterstone. Euphoria, no plans for Euphoria. Between Two Cities Castles, no future plans for them either. And when I say no future plans, I mean we continue to support their community and continue to reprint these games, but don't necessarily plan to add expansions or new content to them. But I do say we never plan to. It is always possible in the future that we might do something for really any of these games. The future is unknown. It's just I can say with accuracy that we don't plan to do something like that. Sam says he loves the insert in Mythwind. I agree. Yeah, that's a really impressive insert. I'd also say that the cardboard, so they used a lot of plastic in Mythwood, which I get, but the use of cardboard in Iridia and how they make it fairly easy to save what your character is doing by having dual layered player mats that go into a cardboard sleeve in Iridia to save as the save state. I thought that was really clever. And each player also has a tuck box for loose tokens and things like that. Mark, you're touching upon one of mine that I was going to talk about. Mark says, I like how AllPlay has a bunch of partner publishers that are smaller and they can bundle shipping to save costs. Mark, this was actually the thing that originally inspired the post, because I was going through a pledge manager for AllPlay, and I saw that they first offer other games of theirs that you can add to your order, and then they offer other games from publishers that they fulfill for, so that they are the warehouse for these other publishers. I thought that was really, really clever. Yeah, I totally agree. Craig says, will there be a save game mechanism in Vantage? Well, Craig, Vantage is not a campaign game. I guess you're asking, like, what if you're playing Vantage for 2 hours and you want to continue playing, but you have to do something else. I would say in that way, it's like any other game that you want to pause and stop playing, where you got to leave it on the table or take a photo of it. Yeah, the game is not designed to be played over multiple sessions. And so if you want to do that, you kind of have to figure out what method works for you. I have a gaming table where I have a second layer. So I would probably, if I think that could happen with Vantage, I might put it on the bottom layer. But it's also possible to end Vantage. It's in the rulebook, kind of a late edition of the rulebook, where we say, If you have played out your time, if you said we want to play Vantage for 2 hours and you've played for 2 hours, that is a viable end state to say, okay, we played for 2 hours. That's a game of Vantage. So there's that in it too. Maxwell recently played Stamp Swap. Well, that's awesome. Some great conventions happening over the last weekend, I think. Whose Turn and the Level Up Game Retreat. Andy says Kavango did a cool thing where they included a map with the game showing where in the Kavango region the wildlife are located. That is really neat. That's a nice addition. That's from Mazama Games. Jeff says, so Jeff was also at Geekway. I got to play Windmill Valley and Wondrous Creatures with Jeff at Geekway. He says top 3 Geekway mini games for Finspan, Stonespine Architects, and Vantage. That's awesome, Jeff. I'm honored to hear you say that. And he says he would swap out, if he had to swap out Stonemaier Games, he would add Wondrous Creatures and Cities. And I won't spoil it, but Jeff found a way in Vantage to also greatly accelerate the game if you want to accelerate it. There's a way that you can discover in the game to do this. Pete likes the magnetic playmats in Gnome Hollow. Aaron likes, I'm just saying stuff that other publishers are doing, cool things that other publishers are doing now. I know I'm behind on comments. Aaron says Awakened Realms did something with Dragon Eclipse where they created a CCG feel in a non-CCG game. There were unboxing instructions, and part of it had you load cards into packs that you unlock later. That's neat. That's a neat thing to do. Tim got to play a lot of games with Tim at Geekway, including the aforementioned Art Society. Tim says, got our Finspan in the mail recently. Looking forward to getting it to our table. I'm glad it arrived, Tim, and I hope you enjoy your. I know it's not your first play, but your first play of your copy of Finspan. Wendy also mentions Art Society here. I do, Wendy. I agree. I really like the felt insert in Art Society. It makes it feel classy, and that's kind of the point of Art Society. Anthony says that he likes how Miniature Market packaged Finspan. That's great to hear. I appreciate that feedback, Anthony. Garrett says games like Aqua and Into Arcia with their high-quality punchboard inserts that are both stylish and functional. Yes, Garrett, send me some great photos of inserts that do this. I think it's a really clever way to make an insert like that. Chad says, you said you don't typically play games solo. That's true. It's pretty rare that I play tabletop games solo. Has playing Vantage solo so much changed your thoughts on playing others solo more often, or is that restricted just to playtesting? That's a good question, Chad. I was thinking about this just this morning. I really love Vantage solo. I do love playing it with other players too. But there's something special about dropping onto this planet and just wandering around for a while and at your own pace. I don't know if it'll carry over to other games. I have tried recently to play some other games solo, and it just wasn't the same. But Vantage, I can't get enough of solo. And this is a game that I know inside and out, but it still feels like I'm discovering new things as I play the game. So it might just be a Vantage thing. Yeah. I'm never going to close the door on solo, though. I am still interested in solo, and because there are times where either Megan is not interested in the game or Megan's not here, as is the case right now, to play a game with me, and that maybe my gaming groups aren't interested in a particular game. All right, I'm behind on comments, so I'm going to skip forward. I'm going to focus on questions for a minute here. Tim says, have you seen the Vineyard game from Pencil First Games? I have. I'm aware of it. Ed told me about it. I don't know the details about the game yet, but I am curious about it. Mark says, how much time are you able to play games that you aren't designing or testing? Do you use some of the other games for inspiration on developing new mechanisms and combos? Mark, yes, I am constantly inspired by other games that I play or other games that I'm just consuming content about, like other reviews about. I typically play games. I play games every Wednesday. I play games most Thursdays, and I often play games at least once on the weekends as well. So I'm quite frequently playing games from other designers and other publishers, both for fun and to learn from them as a designer. Some games, for example, that I played recently, to answer Mark's question, played a lot of games recently because I hosted a gaming day this past weekend, and other games kind of around that were, I mentioned Wilmot's Warehouse. I played Forest Shuffle with a new Woodland Edge expansion. I played Star Trek Captain's Chair yesterday, and I played the new Dune Imperium Bloodlines expansion, and I played The Hobbit Love Letter and played Caution Signs. I think those are all the games that I played very recently. Let's see. I'm going to focus. I'm going to drop down a little bit here and look for questions here. Hector says, if a board game is submitted and accepted, how closely does Stonemaier work with the publisher to refine, choose the market, playtest, and other processes to bring the game to market? That's a great question, Hector. And I can speak only specifically for Stonemaier Games here, because when we sign a game, it is really the beginning of a partnership between us and the designer. The development process often looks like, so we'll play the game. I'll play the game, and I will compile usually a big email to the designer where I'll say, here's what I liked, here's what I think needs work. What do you think? And then our expectation for the designer is not only for them to reply, but also for the designer to then go and play test the game and make revisions to it, and then send a revised version back to me. And either then I will play test it again, oftentimes do, and or if it's ready, I'll send it into blind play testing, and then I'll get all that feedback. I'll send all that feedback to the designer, and we will repeat that process until the game is ready. So the designer at Stonemaier Games is very involved in the design process. And oftentimes, even after that, or during that, if we're working on the art and graphic design during that process, I will go to the designer and I will say, here is the artist that we're considering. Here is the card layout that we're considering. Does this work? Does this work for you? And I'm not necessarily looking for their permission there, but I always know that the designers we work with will know the games better than we do. We'll never catch up. As much as we love and play the games that we publish, we'll never catch up to how much the designer knows about them. So I want to get their buy-in and their feedback for those types of things. Hopefully that answers your question. Yeah. I would say that even though we work closely with the designers in that way, the designer, we take all the risk off the designer. The designer is not responsible for anything financial. They don't pay for the art. They don't cover they're not responsible for the marketing, for logistics, for publishing. That is all stuff that we handle as the publisher. Yeah. Gmoney14 says, just got Stamp Swap yesterday. Looking forward to playing tonight. Any suggestions for gameplay or strategy? So I would say one thing about Stamp Swap is that it is easy to be drawn to the rare stamps. They are beautiful gold foil stamps. When I play Stamp Swap, I like going after the gold stamps. They're fun to get. They're fun to have on my mat. You are more than welcome to do that. However, the gold stamps don't score for color. They do score for shape. But they don't score for multiple scoring categories, color and like a theme. And so despite their high points, it can be better to go after stamps that have themes and colors because they can score for multiple categories. So keep that in mind. Just keep that in mind when you play. Craig, thank you, Craig. This is Lens and Veil. Lens and Veil is the podcast from Garphill Games. I believe this is the one that you mentioned. Thank you, Craig. Johnny says, Meadows base game comes with expansions that you unlock in the real world. Open, for example, open after a trip to the forest where you saw a wild animal, open on the first day of spring. I do, Johnny, I think that is so cool. When I first played Meadow, I was like, wow, that is a really, really cool addition. It's one of those things, like one of the puzzles for any publisher is to give people a really good reason to get the game back to the table. And we do, there are many ways that we do that. But that is a really cool way to do it, to just encourage you to mark your calendar, be like, okay, on April 5th this year, we're playing Meadow. That's really cool. Yeah. I don't know if I've highlighted that before, but you know, I'm not even going to take notes now because you all have mentioned so many great things from other publishers and continue to do so. I see in the list here that I'm going to go back through the comments before I write the blog post to make sure I don't miss any of them. Yeah, so I'm so far behind that. I'll just focus on questions here. Josh says, I'm currently prototyping a game and your videos have been a huge help. I'm glad to hear that, Josh. Our group are big fans of Scythe and Expeditions. Any more expansions for either a possibility? We are working on a second expansion for Expeditions right now. Yeah. Let's see. Jeremy says, I know you stay away from watching reviews of Stonemaier games. You say you value Dice Tower as a designer. And here's the rest of Jeremy's comment. What do you think of their feedback for Finspan that pre-printed fish should look more like cards and the pre-printed token locations should look less like the actual tokens? This is something that I've heard from a few people, not just Dice Tower. And I don't think I agree because we tested a version of the mats that have the forage fish that look like cards. The problem is the forage fish, while they are fish, they don't have points on them. So they need to look different than other fish. Yeah, I did hear the feedback. The other feedback is someone else said that it was a post on Board Game Geek where they said that the pre-printed token locations where you start the places where you start with an egg, 2 eggs and a school, or 2 eggs and a young. They said that it looks too much like the actual tokens, and they often confuse them with the actual tokens. This I don't understand at all, because I think the colors are very muted on the ocean mats. They look completely different than the actual tokens. Not completely different. They look so much more muted that I don't understand how someone, especially not someone who plays a lot of games, could easily confuse those two things. So I think there is definitely a gray area for the pre-printed fish. I can see some people liking one over the other. And I think if we ever make the rubber playmats, we'll do one side of the rubber playmat with the fish, the forged fish looking like cards, and we'll see which side people decide to use. But I can't see a viable reason why someone would confuse the cardboard tokens, the full color, vibrant color tokens with the heavily muted starting spaces on the player mat. That doesn't make sense to me. And also, a lot of people are going to have the upgraded tokens too, so they're definitely not going to confuse those two things. Let's see. Aaron says, "Can you clarify if Stonemaier has full ownership of the full Tokaido line?" We do. Yeah, we own the entire Tokaido brand, including all expansions, Namiji Duo. Yeah, everything for Tokaido, or Tokaido brand. Yeah. Let's see. I know I'm behind again. I'm just looking for questions. Let's see. Aaron says, "Are you looking to just reprint the Tokaido line, or are you making some changes, more like second editions or redux?" We are looking to not change anything about the gameplay of Tokaido, but for really every single product. So I started with Tokaido. That work was done a while ago. Tokaido Duo working on now. I'm also working on the expansions now. I'm just looking to make things more accessible and more user-friendly. I think as beautiful as the game is, I think it is much less user-friendly than it needs to be because of how much they strove for language independence. I don't think I don't think that was a good decision for the game. So we are adding, for example, on the back of all the character tiles, we are adding text on the tiles that explains how their abilities work, what the icons on the tiles mean, right there on the tile. So you don't have to go back to the rule book or pass around the rule book. You can just flip over your character tile and read what it does. Things like that to make the game more accessible and more user-friendly. Hilda says, "I learned something about my own sister because of Stamp Swap. She saw the box on our shelf and immediately wanted to play. Apparently, she collects stamps, and I never knew." That's really neat. I don't hear that often, Hilda, about games in general, but I love the idea that by showing someone your game collection, you might be able to learn something new about them, by seeing what they're drawn to in your game collection. That is really cool, and I'm glad that she enjoyed the game too. Josh says, "Have I been able to continue Iridia with other players?" I have not yet continued Iridia with other players yet. Joshua says, "I'm having a blast, but struggling to find games to play next. There are too few games that tackle roleplay, combat, and exploration equally." Yeah, that's a tough combination, especially I think there are a lot of games like this, Joshua, which is one of the reasons that I designed this in Vantage. A lot of games where combat is given so much more focus than other things. And honestly, I felt that was the case with the tutorial of Iridia. I don't know if that's the case if you play much beyond the tutorial, but the tutorial in Iridia, you have like this whole I would say a streamlined tutorial walking you through how to do the standard things in the game. And there's a whole other tutorial for combat, speaking to how much emphasis the game could put on combat, even though I think you can generally avoid it in some cases in the game. I don't know exactly how, I'll ask you, how many locations have you walked onto in Iridia that resulted in combat versus those that don't result in combat? Yeah, that's something advantage that was really important to me, that that you have really in Vantage. Whenever you encounter a situation, you have 6 different ways to deal with it. You can, the actions are move, look, you can engage with it, like talk, you can try to help, you can try to take, like steal, and you can overpower. You can use force to do it. So combat is essentially just one of 6 different ways to interact with the world in Vantage, and you always have that choice. You always have a choice there. LB Jeeper says, "Do you ever envision a future where Stonemaier may purchase another publishing company? What's your vision for Stonemaier after you retire?" I think it's highly unlikely that we would ever purchase another publishing company. I think it is slightly less highly unlikely that we might do something like we did with Tokaido, which was a very specific situation. I really don't see that happening again either, but where we purchase the rights to a specific game or specific line of games that we think fit Stonemaier Games specifically well. Yeah. What's my vision for Stonemaier after you retire? I haven't really pictured a future where I am not involved with Stonemaier Games, so I don't know what that looks like. Ian says, is Stonemaier or you interested in publishing historically accurate games, not war games, but other aspects in history? We are not. Yeah, no, we're not looking to publish games that have real world history, events, or people in them. Yeah. Mark says, he says he's having a great time at his new workplace, and it wouldn't be possible without you. I think it would be, Mark. I think you're well deserved to have this new job. But congratulations. I'm glad you're really. And Mark also got FinSpan. That's great. Ian says, are there a number of playtests you reach for, or is it a natural end when you feel the game is ready? Part of it is, so the minimum is 3 rounds of blind playtesting. That's always the minimum of blind playtesting, worldwide blind playtesting. That's the minimum. There is a gut feeling aspect. Do I feel like the game is ready? And there's also the data aspect, because we are always asking playtesters to rate the games they play. And if we are seeing consistently very high ratings, then we feel like the game is ready. That plays into it, at least. Mark says, have you ever played Obsession? I have. Yeah, I have a video about Obsession on our YouTube channel. Mark says, from what I can tell, it is almost an entirely unique game that has no equivalent. And I wonder if there's any other games that are so unique in their theme and mechanisms. This isn't to discredit Obsession, but I think there are a lot of games that have a lot of overlap with Obsession. Like I think I could easily make a video about games that I would recommend that share similarities with Obsession. I think maybe the thing that makes Obsession stand out to a certain extent is how deep into the theme of the designer went. But there are a lot of games that go deep into the theme too. It's just that specific theme isn't explored all that much in gaming. But yeah, Mark, I'm glad you love Obsession. And I think Obsession is a fantastic game, but I think it shares a lot of mechanisms with other games at the very least. Let's see. Jeff says, today is our semester wellness day for students, and I'm giving a presentation this afternoon. What's your top recommendation for self-care and wellness? Ooh, Jeff, that's a tough question because I want to answer something full of wisdom here for self-care and wellness. Okay, I'll say something that I struggle with, that I think I still need to do better at, and that is sometimes when dealing with the internet and other people, either the internet and maybe a tough email that I get, I respond a little bit too quickly. I jump to the response, and more often, I think what I need to do is write the response, but not post it, and walk away and do something else. That is the self-care part. And then come back to that response fresh. So that's both me taking care of myself, but also me trying to take care of other people. Yeah, I would say being able to write something, but not post it, walk away, digest it, come back to it, and figure out what you really want to say is a skill that I am still working on, and I would recommend other people. Yeah. Julian says, every time I play Tokaido, I wish the path was modular so that it wasn't always the same. Has this been considered? So that would be a big gameplay change to Tokaido, Julian, and we're not looking to make gameplay changes to the mechanisms of Tokaido. I don't know if I've had that same wish from Tokaido, because the variety in the game doesn't come from the path. It comes from what other players are choosing along that path, what they're leaving open to you, and what you're drawing, because there is a lot of randomness in what you collect, what you draw in many of the different places along the Tokaido road. I will say that the expansions, which are heavily on my mind right now, I've been working on the expansions a lot. They changed that formula a lot by offering a lot of new travelers and also new options at each of the different stops along the way. And even the inn. So the Matsuri expansion changes something that happens at the inn. The Crossroads expansion gives you another choice at every single stop along the way. So with those choices added to the game, especially then, I don't think I'd be looking for a variable path. However, I am hoping to work with Antoine Bauza to make a third game in the Tokaido line. And that certainly could be something that we could consider for that game, some sort of modularity for the path itself. Let's see. Skip the Mayo says, is there a theme you're dying to explore in a Stonemaier game but haven't yet? One of my favorite fictional themes in general is time travel and time loop fiction. And we haven't done a game that fully embraces that. We have a little bit of time travel in a few different games, but not where that is the whole theme of the game. And so that's something that I'd love to have in a game. I also love, in terms of fiction, I love heist. Actually, there are two other themes that we explored that I haven't. So I love magical academies and I love heist fiction. So magical academies, heist fiction, and time travel. And I would say if you're trying to submit a game to some of our games, don't try to combine all those different themes. Like I've seen people try that, knowing that I like those themes, and it doesn't really work. So I mean, maybe you can get it to work. Maybe there's two of those, but for the sake of combining them, don't just try to combine them. But those are three themes that I really, really like. Chad says, for those who currently have Tokaido, are there any plans to sell an upgrade pack or something that has the upgraded cards and components that have been updated? Chad, so partial answer. In the solo pack, so we're adding solo rules to Tokaido and Tokaido Duo. And we'll add solo. We'll make sure it's compatible for the expansions as well. In fact, I need to make a note about that for the Otama team. Yeah, because I don't think they know that I'm working on this right now. In the solo pack, so we're selling solo in the game, but we're also offering a solo pack for those who want to add it. We've added the panorama cards specifically because a lot of people have said they don't like the composition of the panorama cards in Tokaido. Same art, just a better card quality, or different card quality. I think people, I won't go into it, but that's the thing. Beyond that, though, we're talking about like 75% of the components in the game. So at that point, that is, I think, too much for us to replace. We are essentially just giving you the game at that point. So I know that's not ideal for those who already own Tokaido. I certainly think there's value in having cards and tiles that have the text on those cards and tiles rather than you having to decipher the icons. But because that is so much of the game itself, we don't plan to offer those components, those revised for accessibility components, as their own pack. Okay, Joshua says that he's played Iridia for 2 hours without getting into combat on multiple occasions. He says there are a lot of roleplay scenarios that don't involve combat at all. That's great. That's wonderful. I would say is probably my preferred way to play Iridia if I had the chance to play again with other people in particular. To have the roleplay elements without the combat stuff. Yeah. Chad says, how is Megan's expedition going? Megan is having a wonderful expedition right now. Megan is in Singapore right now for a few days, and then she will return back to St. Louis. She's on a trip with her mom. Travis, thank you, Travis, for saying this. Travis, one of someone who contributed heavily to Vantage. He says, I'm not much of a solo player either, but during playtesting Vantage, solo was really satisfying. In part, there's so much to explore and so much variability from game to game, which keeps plays fresh. And Travis knows the world inside and out, just like I know the world of Vantage inside and out. And I am still amazed by how much there is to discover in this world. Edward says, are design day signups coming soon? Has there been any decision about adding an extra day? So Edward, we decided not to add an extra day, at least for now. Instead, we are encouraging people who have been wanting more design time from design day to do design stuff at Geekway to the West, because there are some opportunities here in St. Louis at Geekway to the West, unrelated to Stonemaier Games, to playtest prototypes and to show prototypes to publishers and things like that. So we're going to encourage and support that. Design day signups should probably start pretty soon. I don't know the exact time. We are going to the new pieces location soon to determine how much we can increase the head count at Design Day 2025, because they do have a bigger space now. We don't want to overinflate the head count, but we think we can increase it a little bit. Let's see. Aaron has a comment about Jeff's self-care question. He says, community care is another huge component of well-being. We're social creatures, and support from others needs more emphasis, especially here in the U.S. Aaron, I really like that. I agree, and I like that. Ian says, will you be offering upgrades for Vantage at the time of publication? We will. We'll have 3 upgrades for Vantage. I haven't gone deep into them, but I can say them out loud really quick here. There are player mats. You don't need player mats in the game. It's an upgrade if you want player mats. We'll have wooden skill tokens, and we'll have metal coins. The metal coins you can already see on our web store. Luke says, has there ever been talk about a Scythe RPG? Long story short, Luke, yes. Many people, especially when Scythe was at its peak early on, multiple people came up to me and said, hey, I'd love to make a Scythe RPG. And someone even went through the effort of making one and submitted it to us. And I realized right off the bat that I have no idea, as someone who doesn't play RPGs, I have no idea about what makes an RPG good or not. And I also have no idea about the RPG infrastructure. That it's a whole different system than tabletop games. They're often closely aligned. They often are sold in the same place, but it's a different distribution system. Or at least different enough that I don't know it. And so I realized at that time that we should not be the publisher of an RPG. We are not equipped to do that. I am not equipped to do that. And so I told Jakob that if he ever wants to publish an RPG or license the world of Scythe to another company to make a Scythe RPG, he is welcome to do that. I'm not going to stand in his way. I'd love to know about it if he does that, but I support that. But it won't be something that Stonemaier Games does. Aaron says, will the expansions for Tokaido be releasing with a base game? No. The base game is already on its way to fulfillment centers now. Whereas I am just now working on the expansions. Yeah. Jeff recommends That Time You Killed Me as a time travel game. Luke says, do you have any interest in playing Civ 7? It looks really nice, but I'm a little overwhelmed. I might check it out. I've actually heard that maybe it might be a little more streamlined than some Civ players liked, and I like streamlined. So, yeah. Joshua says exploration of Vantage absolutely sounds like it might scratch an Iridia itch in a way. Yeah, it's definitely a different game than Iridia. It's quite different from Iridia. Yeah, I think it scratches some of the itches. Unless if you're in Iridia for the combat, Vantage is not going to scratch that itch. But if you're in it for the exploration, the discovery, making decisions that feel right to you or your character, Vantage is all about that. Jordan says, I know that you've mentioned enjoying Survivor in the past. I do love Survivor. Have you ever considered applying? I feel like a game designer's brain would bring an interesting approach to strategy. I would love to see someone from the game industry on Survivor. Absolutely, I would love to see that. But for me, I get migraines if I don't eat 3 meals a day. And so I would be in a lot of pain on Survivor, I think. So no, I'm not. I'm going to enjoy Survivor from afar. I did get to go to the Survivor, one of the last live Survivor finales. I was able to attend it, and at the finale, when they have all these like little activities that you can do outside, including some of the challenges that you do on Survivor. And I was not very good at that. Like even having the pressure of having a few random people watching was a lot to like even just like stand on a balance beam and balance a little ball on a pole was very difficult. Way harder. Like I'm way more impressed now having tried to do that they are able to do it with full pressure, the pressure of $1 million and your friends surrounding you on the beach. Yeah, very impressive. Steve says, I'm curious to know what the pre-production phase involves. So yeah, great question, Steve. So pre-production, when we feel like we are done with the files for the game, we send them to Panda, our manufacturer. And Panda looks at those files. They process those files to make sure that that they can produce the game at scale in the way that they hope to. And usually this just means like them fitting cards onto the card sheets and looking at different components, oftentimes components that we've already talked to them about, and making sure that they can make them at scale and make them accurately and make them so that they don't fall apart and they don't break, to make sure that the box can hold all the components. They're asking kind of all these questions about how can we most optimally and best make this product. And oftentimes it involves them sending digital files back to us and saying, hey, like this thing doesn't work quite the way that you hoped it would. Can you revise this? We'll touch it up and revise it. And they also, during that stage, send us a pre-production copy of the game, which is a single printing of the game that looks a lot like they've gotten really good at making the pre-production copy, the PPC, look like a final copy of the game, even though it actually isn't. And that we can play that copy to make sure that we didn't miss anything, and we offer them feedback at that point. That is, that's the pre-production phase. I know I'm still behind on questions, so I'm looking for questions here. Mark says, do you have any suggestions for playing Viticulture World at 2 players to improve our score? Some people told me that's the hardest player count to play at. I don't know if I say that about player count specifically, but it is a difficult cooperative game. I don't know if I have any great tips about how to play Viticulture World better. I am not very good at weeding Viticulture World. So, but maybe someone else has some suggestions for you. Bojan says, have you ever considered bringing digital realms into one of your games through app integration, a la Destinies, for example? I have a feeling Vantage would be great for that. I can't wait for it. No, yeah, I'm not really. When I play tabletop games, as open as I am to playing a game that has a digital app, as a publisher and mostly as a gamer, I'm interested in turning off screens when I play games. I want the immersion that having no screens provides for me. And Advantage, I'm very glad that there are no screens involved with it. I even just the tactile nature of looking into the storybook for the cost of an action, for the description of an action, is much more satisfying for me than looking that up on a digital app. Yeah, there's something. I think because we're so surrounded by screens, our brain switches into a different mode when we see a screen. And it's one of the reasons, honestly, that I've really been enjoying playing Vantage solo on the tabletop now, because we play tested it digitally for so long that digitally I could easily be distracted while playing a game of Vantage because I have it up on my one screen, I have something else on another screen. And so now I can just focus on playing Vantage. I can just get lost in this world, and I don't want a screen to take that away from me. So no, that isn't something that we're pursuing, especially not for Vantage. Mark says, how's your family game submissions looking? So it isn't exactly family game, Mark. We're looking for one great, light, short, easy to learn, really fun game. And it's going okay. It's going okay. I wouldn't say that we have any huge highlights so far, but we're still looking. We're hoping for a breakthrough. Peter says, what are the Tokaido box dimensions? Oh, I don't know that offhand, Peter, but it is the smallest version of the Tokaido box that you may have seen. It's the 10th anniversary box size. Yeah, it's a relatively small box. Aaron says, are you watching the Traders? I am watching Traders. Yeah, it's fun to see some survivors on the Traders show. I've only watched the US version so far, but I really do enjoy it. Jay Bringus says, did King's Dilemma, a game that I love, influence your design of Vantage? I do love King's Dilemma, but no, I would not say it is. King's Dilemma is a legacy game. Vantage is not a legacy game. King's Dilemma is a campaign game. Vantage is not a campaign game. King's Dilemma involves a lot of shared decisions between players. That's the whole game. You're voting on stuff. That's not something that happens in Vantage. You're talking, you're discussing, you're collaborating, but you're not voting in Vantage. So I really value the time I spent with King's Dilemma, but it does not have any crossover into what Vantage is. Ian says, will there be a music list one can play when playing Vantage? Probably not something from Stonemaier Games, but if it's something that I will happy to broadcast if a fan comes up with something and maybe post a playlist or something like that. The Infinite Dude says, on the topic of elimination games, have you seen the South Korean show The Devil's Plan? I have, yeah. I really, really love The Devil's Plan. Instead of physical challenges, they play puzzle strategy games. I love it. That's what the Infinite Dude says. Yeah, I agree. It's a really, really good, or at least I really, really enjoyed the Devil's Plan on Netflix. And I think they are making a season 2. Paul says, did you ever think of using Foreteller for Vantage? No, I think someone asked about it. Maybe Foreteller reached out to me and asked about it. But in Vantage, the text that you're reading is really, really short. And for part of the reasons I just mentioned about the screen and the time that it would take to look up the text, you could have already read the text out loud very briefly in Vantage. So no, we didn't consider doing that. Or I didn't consider doing that. Board Game Eric says, we're currently playing through Lands of Galzier. Will Vantage scratch that itch? We're looking forward to it regardless. If you're playing it cooperatively, maybe a little bit. Vantage does have... So Lands of Galzier, I would say that the comparison is the skill tests are maybe a little bit similar to Vantage. Vantage, you have more choices to make during the skill tests and more way to level up your skills and the things that you're good at than in Lands of Galzier, which is, because it's a campaign game, it constantly kind of keeps you in check as to how powerful you can get. The other area of overlap is the freedom. In Lands of Galzier, there you have a lot of freedom as to what you can do in the game. You can go anywhere. Now you know where you're going on a map. You don't necessarily know what you'll see when you get there. Vantage has no map. You are wandering around on a planet looking at things from a first-person perspective. So you have the freedom of decisions in Vantage, I would say, are somewhat similar to the freedom of decisions and movement in Lands of Galzier. Julian says, does Stonemaier have any digital art packs containing art from your various games that we can use as desktop wallpapers? My work computer is fairly boring at the moment. So what we do have, we don't have much of that for your computer, but Corel recently started creating phone wallpapers. So we have one of those for FinSpan. I think he created one other one. I don't know what the game is. I can't remember what the game is, but he might continue to do that for fun. And we put that on our public Dropbox. So it's the same Dropbox. If you look for like the rules for any of our games on our website, it'll take you to the public Dropbox. That stuff is there if it is available. And we'll probably continue to do that. Chad says, have you seen the Fantastic Four teaser? Are you excited about this movie? I'm definitely excited. I was so excited that I almost didn't watch the teaser because I didn't want it to, I already know I'm going to see the movie. But then I saw that it was set in like a 60s style, like a Jetsons style world. And I was like, oh, I have to see this. I have to see what I'm looking at here. So I did watch the trailer yesterday. And I will say, I thought the trailer did a really good job, other than maybe one thing, of not spoiling stuff. Like they're just giving you like a very brief teaser of their approach to the Fantastic Four. And I am, after seeing the teaser, I am even more excited about it. And I was already pretty excited about it. Let's see. Paul says, how many cards are in Vantage? Vantage has effectively 1,700 cards. There are 900 cards that you can discover and 800 locations, first-person locations on cards. However, those first-person locations are printed on back-to-back cards. So they're big cards. They're 80 by 120, and they're printed back-to-back. So even though it's 1,700 cards worth of content, it's actually just 1,300 cards, actual cards. You all have been so talkative today. I loved it with your questions that I haven't finished everything here. Let's see. A few quick topics. I'm still reading the new Brandon Sanderson book, almost all the way through. I'm at like 95%. I watched a movie called A Real Pain on Disney Plus this past weekend and thought it was phenomenal. I highly recommend it. And I've also watched The Deepest Breath, which was also phenomenal. A documentary about people who are really good at holding their breath as they dive down really, really deep. And also watched a lighter movie called You're Cordially Invited with Will Ferrell and I'm forgetting the other actress's name, but they were great. Good movie, good lighter movie if you're in for something light. That's on Amazon Prime. Let's see, other things. I think that might be it. Yeah, I was going to say that I have been playtesting Vantage, some other games, working on the Tokaido expansions, and also just personally playtesting Inkborn, which is the digital roguelike game that I am involved with as a consultant. And I had some good playtests of that recently. Thank you all for joining me. I really appreciate your answers to the questions that the question that I asked about something cool that another publisher is doing. I know I didn't read nearly half of them out loud, but I will go back and look at them before I write the article about that topic. So thank you for doing that. Oh, here we go. Here's Corel. Corel also made a wallpaper for Between Two Castles. Thank you, Corel, for remembering that. So we have one for Between Two Castles and FinSpan so far, and Corel might continue to add more. The book, Josh, the book that I'm talking about from Brandon Sanderson is called Wind and Truth. It is the 5th book of a series. It is the final book of this part of this series, the Way of Kings series, in Brandon Sanderson's Cosmere. It's like his big epic fantasy series. So yeah, really good book. Yeah, thank you all for hanging out. It's been great. And I hope you have a great week, and I hope you get your copy of FinSpan soon. It should be coming if it hasn't already been shipped. If you're not a champion, it should be shipped very soon. Have a good day. Also, chocolate of the day. Don't forget, chocolate of the day today is going to be Tony's Chocolonely, because I learned that Tony's does a really good job at ethically sourcing their cocoa beans, or their cacao, which I think is incredible. All right. Take care. Have a good day. I'll see you later. Bye.